What is up, everybody? Welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, every team in the NBA played a game last night. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we need a much longer show, honestly, to dive into a night like last night. And the reason, of course, is no games tonight. Pretty big election going on, as we know. Got my early voting done. We've got election going on, no games tonight. So everybody played last night. And there were some good games. There's some interesting storylines. Couple stood out to us a little bit more than the others.
And we're going to talk about every single one of them. So this is a great show for everybody because we will talk about your team. It might be a quick hit, but we're going to talk about every single team that played in the association. And why don't we start with a couple of big ones? I know you watched these games. Sixers versus the Suns last night. The Suns are on a roll. They started a little bit shaky, with a close win and a loss early in the season, but they are now 6-1 as they get the 118-116 win over the Sixers. The Sixers got Paul George back last night. He made his 76ers debut. So what stood out to you about this one, Legs?
A few things. Obviously, yeah, good to see Paul George take the court. Philly, I had a lot of sympathy for Tyrese Maxey and what he's been trying to do just to keep this team afloat. I mean, they end up with the big three offensively, and he's been out there by himself to start the year. And I think we saw it last year. As great as he is, and as much as I love him, and he is one of my favorite players in the league, and it's his game and his personality. I just love the kid. You saw last year, like, he's not on the level of a guy that could just go carry a team as their best player and win games. You saw that last year. The record was when Embiid didn't play. You added Paul George. Hey, maybe that'll mitigate some of those nights when Embiid doesn't play. Unfortunately, they didn't see Paul George until last night. He wasn't great offensively. He looked good. He was moving really well. Looked like he was super energized, very quick. He just, as you would expect, didn't have a great shooting night. Ended up being a great game, though, and Philadelphia actually had this game firmly in control. About 3 minutes to go, 7-point lead. And you're thinking, and they have Paul George out there now with Maxey. Let's close the deal. They weren't able to do it. They had some really rough possessions down the stretch, turnovers, not really quality shots, and then a couple of really important open threes that some role players missed that maybe this game turns out differently. And then on the other end of the floor, Kevin Durant basically doing what he's done his entire career, taking over a game with incredible shot making with guys draped all over him. And he dominated the last 5 minutes of that game. And the Suns get one on a night when it looked like the Sixers had a game stolen on the road. Phoenix rallies, comes back, and they continue 6-1 to start the season. And I said it'd be a different narrative with this team this year. And I certainly feel that way right now, 7 games in. They look happy. They've got a lot of cohesion. They're definitely connected to their coach. And they still haven't really hit full stride offensively, Adam, with those 3 guys. But, hey, just be in the game. And if one of those guys can get hot and take over late, they can still win. And that's what happened last night because Kevin Durant just put that entire game on his back.
What I think is going on with the Suns this year under Mike Budenholzer is that they have incredible scoring talent. They've had that for 3 seasons now. But the spacing that they have really makes the game easy to them. And they just score easy. We talked earlier, I think last week, about some teams it feels like they have to do a miracle to score in the half court, and some teams have actions that make things easy. The Suns are one of the ones that I think is easy. They space the court so well. They're starting their offense much higher. They have their shooters, and it just feels like the paint is wide open. We saw the Spain action last night in the game. It was probably my favorite play of the night. Spain action they run where Kevin Durant gets a wide open dunk, like literally walks through the lane and gets a dunk. And it's because of, again, the personnel they have, but also the spacing. And that's what makes me a believer in this version of the Suns is they're optimizing the gravity they can create with all their offensive weapons.
Yeah, I agree. It looks better. I felt like watching them last year was a little bit like kind of going to get a root canal done, right? Sometimes at the end of it, you feel a lot better. You feel great, right? Yeah. When you still have anesthesia in you, but then it starts hurting again. And that's what I would feel like with the Suns at times. Like, man, it looked like they got it figured out a little bit, and then it would be rough watching them close games. I mean, you think about their numbers in the fourth quarter last year, it didn't make any sense to have players of that caliber offensively and to be like the worst team in the NBA in the fourth quarter made no sense to anyone. Well, early signs here this year, a little bit different. I called their first game of the year on the road against Clippers. They had to come back in that game in the fourth quarter to win. A game the Clippers were in control. They did it again last night at home against the Sixers. And I'm sure, without pulling up their entire schedule right in front of me, I'm sure there's been other nights where they had to do it as well. So they're better when it matters. And that's a big deal, man. Like with that kind of talent, to feel more confident in those moments with this kind of shot making ability, they're going to win a lot of games. Phoenix is a team, I said before the season, and I think it looks like we're headed that way, trending that way. They're going to be in the mix to contend in the Western Conference, because I do feel like the Thunder have separated themselves from everybody a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to the extent Boston has separated in the East from everybody. Oklahoma City has separated in the West, but there are teams closer within arm's reach of them. And I think Phoenix is one of those teams that's in the mix for that. Look, I'd still put my money on Oklahoma City in any 7-game series against any team as we sit here right now, 2 weeks into the season. But Phoenix, it's coming together for them. And some of the new pieces, we talked about Ryan Dunn the other day. Plumlee's been really good for them. Trey Jones has been really good for, or Tyus Jones has been really good for them. This is a team that's added parts, plugged holes, and their top three look more comfortable together. You add all that up, you got an impressive team, and that's what I think Phoenix is.
And I think the last piece for them is going to be the center spot. Yusuf Nurkic was struggling out of the gate. He's had a couple of good games now, or I shouldn't say good games individually, because it's not about individual things for him. It's really about how it fits into the system that they're running and the versatility offensively they're trying to bring. I don't know if it was just that they were playing Andre Drummond last night as the center, which might be. That's like a good matchup for Nurkic, but he was an impact player, as like sort of the centerpiece, making the passes and not hurting the spacing in any bad ways. But to me, that's maybe the last sort of early season question I have for them, is if he can be a consistent positive fit for them on the offensive end.
A lot of talk about it. And in fact, I know internally, like not necessarily in the organization, but like in that city and the fan base and the media, that's going to be a question for them between now and like mid-February. Can we upgrade that? Is this good enough? My answer is, I think it is good enough. I don't necessarily think when you have 3 ball dominant scorers like they already have, you've got spot up 3-point shooters, you've got some guys that can defend. I don't know that you're going to be able to also have that upgraded. I think Nurkic, for what he does, is more than serviceable. He gobbles up defensive rebounds, and he's a good passer. Anything else you get out of him offensively, it's gravy to me. And defensively, you hide him the best you can. He's going to get attacked off ball screen. That's 75% of the centers in this league get attacked off ball screen. There's not a lot of guys that play that spot that do it very well. He's another guy in that category. So when you look at his minutes, 28 minutes, that's about what it's going to be. You play this guy 20, 25 minutes a night, typically, you're fine. Plumlee's going to be better in some areas, worse in others. Between the two of them, you just hope you get, the contributions out of them every night. And that's what I think is going to be good enough for Phoenix. So I'm not saying you got to move the guy. I think he serves them well enough. I think he fits better than Ayton did with this group when you went in this direction. I think DeAndre Ayton was not going to accept not getting the ball. It affected his energy. It affected his mood. It affected his body language. That's not the case with Nurkic. And I think that's more important to them than anything.
On the other side, so we're both buying. You're buying the Suns. I'm buying the Suns as well. Even coming into the year, we were both high on them, and they're proving us right, getting their threes up and converting. On the other side, the 76ers. So Paul George comes back. They're 1-5. They've had a tough go. No Embiid, no Paul George until last night. They've had a tough go. Real quickly on the game last night that I thought was interesting. The ball went in Paul George's hands. And, Paul George, they're down 2 points. There's 16 seconds on the clock, and he plays it as if it's a tie game. He holds the ball for 10 seconds, and then he goes at the end, gets to a spot, elevates for what's a long 2. I guess you can say you can live with Paul George taking a long 2, but they were down 2. I thought that part of this was so strange.
Yeah, well, listen, first of all, just going to him in that spot right now when he's missed all this time, and Maxey, hasn't shot the ball particularly well this year. And I think most of it's because he's taking unmakeable shots a lot of nights. He's a 46% career shooter from the field. He's shooting 40% this year. There's a reason. He's taking shots that he wouldn't take normally because he has no choice but to try to keep them afloat. But he shot it well last night, and he shot it well in the fourth quarter, and he was 12 for 22 on the night. He had just made a couple of step-back threes, and they went there. And I think for me, Adam, this is the biggest issue with not having these guys available. That takes time to sort out. How are they going to manage those possessions? And obviously, if Embiid's in the mix, he's going to probably touch it first, like he should, player of that caliber. And then you just hope he makes a good decision. But, on a night like last night, man, I would think they'd rather than just run clear out for Paul George against Grayson Allen from 30 feet and hope he gets a tough contested shot off that he can make when he hasn't played in a couple of weeks. I don't know. For me, that seems a little bit more difficult than running some sort of action to get Tyrese Maxey something with movement because he's so dangerous. And that could lead to something good for somebody else, maybe even. So that's the point about these guys not being ready at the start of the season. And look, Paul George had a bone bruise in preseason. Nothing you can do about it. I get it. Embiid, who knows? They're so ambiguous about what's wrong with the guy and what they're going through. And now he's got other stuff to deal with this confrontation with the reporter. That's the whole nother story. That's the problem, though. There's no continuity. There's no ebb and flow that they figured out in these moments. And there's too much thinking going on right now, including by the head coach. So as a result, they're going to lose close games for a while until those guys get an opportunity to play together.
But it is the big question I have for them is what is the order there? Because they have three great players that all can do different things, but are great in their own regard. But what's the hierarchy? And how do you kind of separate that end of game? Who you go to? Last night, I just thought it was weird. But more than that, I thought it was weird that Paul George held the ball for 10 seconds down too. Like usually you go quick because you might get an offensive rebound. You might get an opportunity. You might miss and have to foul. You might have to do something. He held it like they were tied and missed the shot.
The other thing, you're right about that. The other thing I noticed, I looked at that replay several times. Who's got Grayson Allen on him, who is actually a better defender than people think. But he had an opportunity to get another dribble deeper because the two guys on that side of the court were basically being face guarded because they didn't want to kick out three. So he had all that room on the left side of the lane, and he didn't take Grayson Allen. If he takes one more dribble, Grayson Allen at that point is retreating so hard that if Paul George stops and shoots that little lean back from 18 feet, it's a much more uncontested shot, and it's more makeable. Particularly when, he probably didn't have great legs under him. And so I thought he didn't get what he wanted even in that situation after holding the ball that long. And I personally wouldn't have gone there in the first place. I'm going with Tyrese Maxey. And look, sometimes when you have two great perimeter players and, Embiid's not there, so it's just these two guys, it's going to be night to night maybe sometimes if Embiid's not out there. Like, who's had the hot hand tonight? Who's feeling it? Maxey was feeling it in this game. Yeah. Paul George at no point was feeling it. So it's an odd decision. And it's something that, I didn't hear the post game if Nick Nurse went over that and why they went there and what they went, because I'm sure he got asked about that. You go to a guy that hasn't played, it's his first game, and you've got another guy with 30 plus points that had a great night who's an all-star, and that's where you go in that moment. I don't know, man. I probably would have handled it differently.
The next game we'll talk about here, the Pacers get the win in Dallas, 134-127. You get 30 points out of Miles Turner. You get 25 and 12 out of Tyrese Halliburton. He goes 10 of 16 from the field. On the other side, you get 34 points from Luka Doncic and 15 assists, but they fall at home. They're on a little bit of a struggle here lately. What did you see from this one?
Well, the first thing that stood out to me, I'm going to start with the Pacers. This was the closest I've seen the Pacers look this year to what their best level was last year. And a lot of it has to do with Halliburton. He has not been very good to start the year. He has not shot it well. He's also looked tentative to me at times. He didn't look that way last night. He looked very confident. He looked last night like the guy that had that mid-season meteoric rise last year when, he was playing the way he was in the in-season tournament and then coming out of that. And he went from, Tyrese Halliburton's a really good player to, wow, Tyrese Halliburton's a superstar in a matter of 3 weeks. And so then we really watched him more carefully the rest of the year. But he had moments late in the year where he looked a little hesitant, a little tentative, not completely sure of himself. And I thought that carried into this season a little bit. And I mentioned to you before, like, I don't know, maybe I'm dead wrong, but, he didn't have a great Olympic experience. They won a gold medal, but he didn't really have anything to do with what went on the court. So it wasn't like a confidence boost in what I'm saying to you. Maybe it didn't hurt his confidence, but it's certainly, he goes in there and he earns time and plays well in that setting. Who knows what that could mean to a guy mentally coming into the season and his profile in the league. He didn't really experience that. Well, start of the year, not very good. Last night, that looked like Tyrese Halliburton midseason last year. So that, to me, is what stood out more than anything. And then Miles Turner's the other guy that jumped out to me because I'm sitting there saying, man, oh man, Miles Turner is the thing that swings the pendulum in the direction of the Pacers being a really tough team to deal with in the Eastern Conference. When he plays the way he did last night offensively, they are a complete team on that end of the floor, and they can give you fits. And that Dallas had no answer for them and how to stop them.
And no Derek Lively on the other side. They did have Gafford, but as you said, Turner wins that matchup. As for Dallas, you were real critical of Luka the other day. They've been, there's big expectations for him this year. There's that, you were talking about the Suns as the Thunder in the top tier, but who's going to be the top challenger in the tier below him? And I think most people would pencil in Dallas for that, given what they did last year. This last little bit's been a little rickety. Are you concerned at all about what you're seeing over these last few games, or is this just early season figuring things out?
My biggest concern with them is, like, they're not going to start winning really consistently at a high level until Luka Doncic starts playing more efficiently. It's that simple. He's got the ball too much. He takes too many shots. And when he has games of this year, 9 for 24, 10 for 27, 5 for 22, and 9 for 25, those are 4 nights when his shot selection and his volume of shots, shooting those percentages, is not going to give you a chance to win. There's too many empty possessions, despite his playmaking. And he had 15 assists last night, but he shot the ball horribly again. That's 4 games this year when he has shot the ball horribly, not just like, didn't have a great night shooting. I think he's had 1 game all season where he was 50%. And every other game it's been either horrible or slightly under 50 or in the 40s. And it's just tough, Adam, when you're taking that many shots, especially at the start of the game, which I've alluded to. So he just has to be better. And until he is, it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road for them, I think. My challenge to them and to Luka has been, can you finally get into like the conversation of like top 3 in the Western Conference instead of always in that 5, 6, 7 range? Because that's where they are every year. They're right there. And this is a guy that I don't think is going to win an MVP until they change that. And more importantly, if they're able to get on win 6, 7 in a row, thrust yourself up there where you're up in the stratosphere of Oklahoma City and what looks like Phoenix could be now this year. Get yourself into that category. I think then I take them a lot more seriously as, hey, man, they can win the whole thing. Right now, here early, they've been very inconsistent, and most of it centers around Luka. He's got to play better.
Yeah, I expect it here coming up, but you are right. A little bit of a slow start for him. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to run through the entire slate of games in the NBA, give one quick take, hopefully on every single team in the league on the other side. But first, I want to tell you guys about the Game Time app. You're getting ready to make a purchase to go to an NBA game around the holiday season. Maybe you're looking holiday ticket for tickets for the holidays. Maybe as a Christmas gift, we'll hop on the Game Time app. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I always say that all-in feature right on the front page is my favorite part because you click that button and you're not surprised at checkout with hidden fees, taxes, or anything else. You know exactly what your price is going to be given the parameters that you set. You can scroll the stadium view, which is really nice. So instead of like, is section 312, is that in the corner? Is that in the side? Where is it? You can look at the actual stadium and just scroll and they'll show you exactly where the seat is. And if you want to test out the seat, they've got the little button there, the little icon, which will show you a camera angle from that seat. So you'll know, is this a good view? Am I behind the backboard and I'm not going to be able to see things? Can I see the bench from here? It gives you that nice little view from your seat so you'll know exactly what's happening. And then I also say if you're trying to buy football tickets or just find out what's going on in your area, you can hop on and just see what tickets are available. It'll show you what events are going on that you can buy tickets for. Maybe there was a concert you didn't know about, a festival or something else. It's really great for doing that. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use our code ALLNBA, ALLNBA. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code ALLNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. We're about 2 months away from New Year's, but don't wait till then. You can make your New Year's resolutions right now with Fitbod. Fitbod is perfect companion to keep your exercises fresh and yourself accountable. That last part's big. If you're struggle to get into workouts, having someone or something that holds you accountable is honestly half the battle. Well, Fitbod has that for you. Not only does it help you create workouts based on what your goals are, you just put in your information. I'm this tall, I weigh this much, I'm looking to lose this weight or gain this strength or whatever it is, and it'll customize a workout for you. But equally as important, it'll help you track your workouts. It'll even send you little push notifications if you missed a day or two and say, hey, let's get back in the gym. I got a customized workout for you. It's really, really nice. And what I love is if you're on the go, or even if you're just at a gym, maybe you don't want to buy a gym membership, the big one, you just want to go to the one in your community and they don't have everything. They've only got a handful of equipment. You put in what you have and what type of workout you're looking to do, and it'll customize a workout for you. And then I know a lot of people, you'll go on the internet and try to find different workouts. What's good for me? What's a new movement? And they'll have these little videos or these little photos that it's kind of hard to tell. Am I doing this right? Is this the right thing? Well, what I like about Fitbod is they have over 1,000 different movements, workouts and movements that it shows you an animation of. So you can know exactly, how you're supposed to keep your back straight, whatever it is. So if you're doing a new movement, you can have confidence that that's going to be the exact workout and that you're doing everything right to maximize it. So lock in and stay focused. Join Fitbod today to get your personalized workout plan. You get 25% off your subscription or try the app free for 7 days at fitbod.me/allnba. You can find that in the description of the show, by the way, but that's fitbod.me/allnba. All right, back here, segment 2. I'm with Tim Legler. Do us a favor if you're watching the show, throw us a subscribe. We do this 4 times a week live where you can join the chat, send us some questions. But it's a great show. We like to go deep on a lot of teams. We're going shallow the rest of the way here because we want to hit every team as we get a day off. It's kind of like a nice little 2-week point to kind of take the temperature. But we're going to go on Kings Heat now. The Kings rallied back in this one, and it had a crazy finish. I don't know if you saw this, Legs. They're down 1. I think it was Fox takes a fall-away jumper and misses it. It's kind of a mad scramble. Sabonis grabs it on 1 foot and just kind of throws it up because the clock was winding down. And he hits this crazy little put-back floater off of 1 leg to win the game. It was an incredible rebound and shot, but that's how they win this one. What notes do you have on these two?
I did see the end of that game. I think these are 2 interesting teams because, these are good teams. And I thought Sacramento, by going out, adding DeMar DeRozan, even though it was a different type of player, I thought it was worth the risk to add him because of his ability as a scorer with a tremendous amount of playoff experience and being a big shot maker throughout his career and has made a ton of them. I thought it was worth it, even though he's a different style than what they looked like a year ago. And it's going to take time to kind of figure that all out. So in the beginning, you might be a little bit inconsistent. I think eventually that's going to be a really good move for them. These are, the Heat haven't really gotten a lot of talk here at the beginning of the year. The Heat feel a little bit stale to me and what they are and what their ceiling is in the Eastern Conference, right? With this particular group. That's just kind of how it feels to me. This was a battle. I think it was really, both teams desperately wanted to win this because it's one of those games early in the year against another really good team, man. And when you get into a situation where you have a 1-point game with a couple minutes to go, you're going to put it all on the line to try to get that one because those kind of games are hard to win. And it turns out, like you're right, I saw the last play of the game, and Sabonis made a great play to get Sacramento win. I think the best for both of these teams is still to come, but I feel certainly better about Sacramento's chances for being a team that we're talking about really favorably throughout the year.
Yeah, I think so too. DeMar DeRozan, though, watching this one, and I just watched the condensed version of this game, the usage on him seems really high. Like they're going to him a lot. Yeah. And so when you talk about it's a new piece, you wonder, who gives, who takes a little bit. To me, it kind of, I haven't watched them a lot, but it kind of looks like the same DeMar. Like DeMar always is kind of a heavy usage player. You give him the ball a lot, and that's just what I saw, at least in the condensed version last night.
No, that's I expected that going into it. You don't bring in DeMar DeRozan and think that all of a sudden you're going to implement him into that sort of motion ball reversal, ton of dribble handoff offense. He likes to play a certain way. Likes to get his hands on the ball and then figure out what he's going to do and work guys. He's got that start, stop, hesitation. He loves shooting mid-range. He's one of the best mid-range jump shooters in the league. That's his game. That's his wheelhouse. And you're not going to expect him to change it. That'd be like bringing in Harden and saying, you know what, we're going to run motion offense, James. And, we need you to do a lot of off-ball cutting. Not going to happen. So DeRozan's kind of like that too. This is how he plays. And I actually think Mike Brown, I talked to him out in Vegas this summer. I think that they got it. They get it. They don't want him to change. And they felt like this was an element their team needed. A bigger ball handling guard wing type player that can get quality shots off in important moments. Because Sabonis can be limited offensively at times. And we've seen it in the playoffs. Certain type of personnel, certain game plan against him because he's not a great perimeter shooter. You can bottle him up sometimes offensively when he gives you 20 a game in the regular season, and then you have nights where he gets you 12 in a playoff game. They thought DeMar DeRozan can offset some of that. And so if somebody's going to probably get less opportunity and usage, it's going to be Sabonis. And I think they're okay with that. They knew they needed to upgrade their second best offensive player, and that's what they did.
The Cavs beat the Bucks for the second time in a row, this time in Cleveland. And in the second time in a row, it was a great game that came down to the wire. Darius Garland, 39 points, 8 assists. The guy was on fire. I love watching this guy, man. He's so fun. What I like about the Cavs right now, we talked about them pretty heavy on yesterday's show. If you're a Cavs fan, go back and check that one. We did more of a deep dive. But what I like about the Cavs is when you're building around a young core, you kind of love your guys. And for them, that was Mobley and that was Garland. You bring in Allen and Mitchell, like you bring in some other pieces. But what I love is those two. Mobley and Garland are really shining. And Garland last night, 39 points on 22 shots. Efficient, clutch, everything. I love that kid.
My first look at Darius Garland was, I don't even remember what year it was now. I coached him at the Under Armour Curry All-American Camp, like top 30 players in the country. I didn't know much about Darius Garland, and I coached him in that game. And that's when I was kind of first sitting there. And I remember Fran Fraschilla was with me. He was like my assistant coach, and we're sitting there watching this guy, looking at him like, my goodness, because he's so quick. But he's got unlimited range off the dribble. And I just was like, this combination, I didn't know necessarily what his ceiling would be at the NBA level. At that point, he hadn't even played college basketball. So I'm just looking at him and I'm saying, man, this guy is really talented. And now here we are, fast forward. And I think we talked about them yesterday. And I said, one of the things I really like about him, he can morph into whatever they need him to at times. Like he can be more of a ball screen, get into the lane and find guys type point guard. He has that ability, but then there's other nights, if he gets cooking and gets going and maybe Donovan Mitchell is being dealt with defensively a certain way, and maybe he's a little limited, which he was last night, he can go to the level he did. He can take it to a 30, 35, almost 40-point game on a given night. And that's why I love Darius Garland. He can really fill either role that you need as a more traditional point or a flat out bucket getter if that's what it takes on a given night. And he did it again. And man, oh man, you talk about a team that desperately needed a couple of wins and they come up short back-to-back games that are decided at the very end. Bucks right now sitting there at 1-6. You talk about a nightmare scenario to start the year at 1-6 and all the chirping that's going to be going on in Milwaukee. This is not what they needed.
It's not what they needed at all. No Giannis in this one, by the way. But the Cavs right now have the magic. Like every year, there's a team that just gets the magic. And it could be different teams throughout the year because it doesn't stay usually for 82 games. But they just have a rhythm right now where everybody seems to feel good about things. And Darius Garland really seems like he feels good about the way the team's playing and where his spots are coming. And on the other end is the Bucks. And it was such a contrast. Like this was a 2-point game. Yet the contrast in what I'm talking about right there is so stark, and that it feels like nobody on the Bucks feels good about things. Gary Trent Jr., everybody was excited about that signing when it came in. He's shooting 23% from the field or from the 3-point line. He was 1 of 7 in this game. And that team just, to me, they're one. And you can make an argument if you go down and say, man, barely lost game winner last game, barely lost game winner in this one, narrow loss to a couple of these bad teams, and it was early. But I look at it and I go, I don't know, man. The team just seems to me to have the opposite of the magic. They have a cloud over them where you're already 1-6. Somebody put it out that they have to win at a 600 rate, 6 out of 10 games from their here on the way out, the rest of the way, just to get to 48 wins. They're in a hole, and I'm not buying them getting out of it.
No, and it's fair. Look, I think, and you feel like it's always the same thing with them. You're always talking about, well, we got to see them when they're full strength. When Chris Middleton comes back, and it's like, okay, man, how long have we been saying that kind of stuff? And now Giannis is out. So they've lost games this year when Giannis and Lillard have both been sensational.
That's
right?
why.
And that's what you were looking at and saying, well, man, who's going to deal with this combination? And then last year they had actually won games when Giannis didn't play and Lillard was able to be more like Portland Lillard. And they won games like that. Well, that Giannis wasn't there last night and they weren't able to win a game like that. Now, look, they barely lost 2 games to a team that's, undefeated. So, okay, that's, they battled them. But again, that if any group needed of the teams that are in the top half of the league really needed a good start, I thought the 2 teams I was looking at that had to get off to a good start were Milwaukee and Phoenix. Because, the noise would start in with Durant and these 3 guys, and it's not going to work. And they fired a coach, they bring in a new coach, and it's the same story. So, there's just so much scrutiny around Durant. So they answered the bell. They're off to a great start. The Bucks are not. And I'm sure there's a lot of I don't know how bad the sports talk radio is in Milwaukee. If that was maybe a Northeast corridor city, it'd be pretty bad right now. I don't know how bad they're getting beat up. And they did win a championship recently, but this has been an underachieving group over the last year and the first, 6-7 games of this year.
You go to the Golden State Warriors now. They get the win over the Washington Wizards, 125-112. They were up 9 at the end of the first quarter and basically held that lead for the whole game. They're rolling right now, 6-1. We could start with the Warriors. What's your takeaway from this game or just from the Warriors in general?
I think the first thing is, hey, get Curry back, right? So they won games without him, which was, you think about going into the year, I liked them, but it wasn't like I was in love with any major additions that could carry the day. Buddy Hield's been incredible. We talked about him yesterday. Yeah, but you won games without Curry. And who would think that would have been possible, really, looking at their roster? They're able to do it. He comes back last night, minutes restriction, plays 24 minutes, 24 points. So same old for Steph. They're off to an incredible start, and they feel like, hey, man, and Draymond has said it repeatedly, like, go ahead, sleep on us at your own peril. There's something different. The vibe around this group is different than it was the last couple of years. And I think they're showing that. Look, the Wizards are a bad team. And, there's nothing to beat your chest about beating the Washington Wizards. But what it does say is you take care of the teams you're supposed to. And Golden State showed up for a road game in Washington, and they handled business. They put up 124 points. That's how you're supposed to treat the Wizards if you're Golden State, and you really do want to be treated with more respect than you got a year ago. So that's what I really took out of the game.
Draymond Green had a shout out to the Washington Wizards and their young guys, Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George. He said those guys just play hard. They're building a good culture there. He was actually very impressed, and I like that. Like, for Draymond, for all of the things people don't like about him, I actually do like his honesty on these types of things. Like, he is good about, we talked earlier in the year about, he was asked something about Kuminga, and he just openly is like, he's not a power forward. He doesn't do any power forward stuff. I love his candidness sometimes. And when he says something about a young, not very good team like that they're building a good culture, I take note.
I do too. And I think Draymond is going to be honest about those situations. And look, they do have some young talent. I don't know ultimately what exactly the upside is for some of these guys individually. I mean, Alex Sarr is going to be a big part of that. And he really struggled in Vegas. I don't know if you remember how bad it was for him in Vegas, could not make a shot. And, some people really questioning where he was picked that highly in the draft. He's actually been pretty good here to start the year, man. And he broke a record for consecutive games start of his career with two blocks or more. in the shot block era. So he's making an impact on that end, but offensively, he's shown a lot more than he even showed in Vegas. So that's a good sign. Bub Carrington can flat out score. George is another guy. Keon George is another guy. So this is a group that, hey, you feel like you're always saying it about Washington.
Yeah.
You know, these guys have to develop. I think now they have a young key core group, and it's going to take several years, unfortunately, before they're really a competitive team. But at least another veteran in the league who's accomplished a lot is singling them out after having played them. That's a good sign.
Pistons get the win over the Lakers, 115-103. Interesting one here with the Lakers dropping this one. Anthony Davis remains a monster, 37 points, but just 9 rebounds, 4 assists. No steals or blocks in this game. Pistons, I got to be full disclosure. There's only 2 or 3 teams that I have not yet watched this season. The Pistons are one of them. So I still have to get to them to the docket. I have no notes on this. What are your thoughts here, Pistons or Lakers?
I felt Detroit could be one of, if not the most improved team in the league. And I didn't necessarily mean by record, because I feel like that's going to go to Memphis just by default because of the year they had a year ago and getting everybody back and having John. Like they're going to win. They're going to have the biggest uptick in win total in the league from last year to this year. But that's not necessarily like the product. Those guys are just hurt. Like this is a team in Detroit that has 4 guys picked in the top 5 in the draft on their roster. It's so young. They made the coaching change. I'm a big JB Bickerstaff believer. I think he's a great communicator, but he's also tough when the time calls for it. I think this group needs it. I saw them in the preseason against the Bucks, and I was very impressed with what they can do athletically and defensively, some of the things they can do with their speed and versatility, some of these guys. And they're very young, so they're going to commit fouls, and they're going to do different things, not know the personnel. But the effort, the athleticism is going to be there. And you saw it in this game, man. Hold the Lakers to 103. And by the way, this is now the Lakers have lost 3 out of 4, and this road trip's been not very kind to them, and their defense has collapsed a little bit. So now JJ Redick was getting a lot of love at the start, man. Like their offense was humming. Everybody looked happy. AD's playing out of his mind. So JJ's put some wrinkles in for him. Now, this is like the first tough stretch here for them under JJ Redick as a first-time coach. And so it'll be interesting to see when they get back from this trip what the narrative is going to be and the noise, and just keep an eye on that. But their defense failed them so far on this trip. They go 1-3. And the Pistons are better than they were last year significantly. They're not a factor in the East or anything like that, but that's not an easy team to play anymore the way that it was a year ago.
A tough out. Yeah. The Boston Celtics get a win 123-93 over the Atlanta Hawks. I love the Atlanta Hawks, but unfortunately they're not that great. I like the team. They do have some injuries, so maybe they bounce back. They're 3-5, but the Celtics will go up 40-23 in the second quarter. They break teams as well, man, because they're kind of like the death lineup Warriors, where you're constantly worried that they're going to go on the big run, because they always do. And then they go on the big run and you're down 20. Well, that happened in this game.
How would you like to have a night in which, as a team collectively, you didn't really shoot great from the 3-point line and you took 55 of them? 55 threes in this game for Boston. It's insane, man. More than 1 a minute. Come on. It's nuts.
That is crazy. More than 1 a minute. When you put it that way, it's insane.
This is like, they're gonna shatter records this year for attempts. There's no question in my mind. And they've got so many guys that can do it. They're so comfortable with who they are now and their ability, even if they get into some murky water, their ability to just turn it up both ends. So nothing surprising about this game. Boston, wins this one by 30 on a night when, one of these nights, I don't know what the record is for attempts in a regular season game, but 3 from the 3-point line, they might have already broken. I don't even know what the number is. I get a feeling Boston's going to shatter that this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's move on to the next one. The Nets. This is the shocker of the night. The Nets beat the Grizzlies. Maybe not a shocker. They're both 4-4. The Nets actually have some surprising wins under their belt. I mean, they beat Milwaukee this year. They almost beat Denver. They're kind of a more gritty team than you would think. I mean, given what expectations were. But what stands out to you about the Nets?
Listen, first of all, the Nets were one of those teams going into the season. I just felt like I don't really need to pay attention to the Nets this year. Like every year, there's 5 or 6 teams where you just kind of go, all right, man. Even if they win 30, 35 games, you look at their roster, not super interesting. They're in sort of NBA purgatory. They're not bad enough where they're playing for Cooper Flag, but they're not good enough to really be serious in the East. And they're not even entertaining enough to want to watch. And yet they're 4-4 to start the year, man. I wouldn't have expected it. Cam Thomas, we know, can light it up, and he's been doing it all year. He's like their primary main scoring option. But Dennis Schroeder's played very well for them, and Cam Johnson's played very well for them. And look, they get a nice win. That's a good win against Memphis, a team that is, they're trying to find their footing after the year they had a year ago. They've got Ja back. Ja played in this game, played pretty well in this game. Zach Edey was great in this game. And yet Brooklyn's able to win it in a relatively low
Hold on,
by NBA.
Hold on. Did you just bring up the Zach Edey, Ja Morant 2-man game?
Oh, wait a second. No, actually I didn't. You injected the 2-man game in the middle of those two names I just mentioned. Okay. To
right.
me,
you didn't.
I don't even like
guys.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, Adam. I looked at this box score. I don't even like the fact that their names are next to each other in the box score I'm looking at. I don't want them that connected. I don't think there's a connection there, Adam. I don't think there's a connection there.
You might be right.
Hey, you called it. You said, I think your exact words were, by mid-season, there will be no better 2-man game in the NBA than Zach Edey and Ja Morant. You know what you said? Something to that effect? Something like that.
That's exactly it.
Hey, but
That's
listen,
exactly it.
Zach Edey, 11 for 12, 25 points, 12 boards, and 4 blocks.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I didn't doubt whether Zach Edey could play in the NBA. I never doubted that. Okay. I did have some questions about the pace and speed of the game and the changing ends of the floor and the way the league looks. And like, how is he going to be able to keep up with that? Because for his first 3 strides running are like very slow to get that big body moving. And give the guy credit, man. He's playing well. He's earned a starting spot on this team and best game of the year last night.
Yeah. Keeping it moving here. Let's move on now to the Jazz and the Bulls. The Jazz get the win in Chicago, 135-126, high scoring affair. Any notes here on either of these two teams? I saw the Jazz in Denver, so this is a big win for the Jazz. The first win of the year. I saw them in Denver 2 days ago, and I was blown away. They were shorthanded, but I was blown away at some of the guys who were getting not just a little bit of minutes, but big minutes. They are not a great team. They might be the worst team in the NBA this year, especially when they don't have their main guys.
Yeah, marketing. This is definitely a challenged roster. They've got some individually talented players. None of it really looks like it fits together. You don't want any team to suffer at the start of the year like that, wondering when they're going to win a game and how long is this thing going to last. So from that standpoint, off the schneid, they were 0-6 going in, and they beat, a very average Bulls team to get their first win of the year. They got to feel pretty good about themselves. Just individually, Keontae George is great in this game, 33 points, 24 for Colin Sexton, and then 28 off the bench for John Collins. That pretty much represented their offense.
Yeah. And then I don't really have any notes on the Bulls either. I mean, they're obviously a team that we always know where they are. 3-4 sounds about right. The game I really want to talk about, though, Rockets get the Knicks 109-97. Man, I have a handful of teams that I just love out the gate. Like you asked me, some of my favorite teams so far. Charlotte's been really fun to watch. Ja Morant, when he's on the court, I can't take my eyes off of him. But the Houston Rockets are my sneaky Western Conference team. I love this team because of how hard they play. I love the guys off of the bench. I love when a bench kind of has an identity. Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, those guys are dogs with an insane motor who are just so hard to score on. I love this team, and they got a big win over the Knicks.
Got a big win. Defense, which we loved about them a year ago, showed up in a big way in this game. The Knicks really had struggles offensively in this one. Jalen Brunson had a rough night. Give credit to Houston for that. Houston's an interesting team because you look at their season. They've had some nights where they kind of rode Jalen Green offensively and won games. They've had nights where their role players played incredibly well, including your guy, Tari Eason. But then last night it was like Şengün and Van Vliet, right? It was those two guys and Van Vliet has struggled a little bit shooting to start the year. And they were the two guys offensively that really got it done in operating against the Knicks. The two-man game was powerful, and Şengün was really, really good. And the Knicks, I think the Knicks are very much trying to figure out how they want to play and who they are. They had an incredible run a year ago with a very specific identity. And the identity is a little bit different now with all the changes that they have made. So I think they're still trying to figure themselves out. I expect great things from the Knicks when it's all said and done. I believe in their toughness. I believe in Brunson. But right now they're a little bit disjointed.
What about, do you believe in the Houston Rockets? Because obviously the West is, there's some good teams out there, but I'm just curious if they're like a real, you don't want to play them in a playoffs kind of team or what they are. Like where do you think they're going to wind up?
I think they're going to be most likely a play-in team. They're not going to be below that. Last year, they had that great run at the end of the year. They almost caught Golden State for the last spot and get into the play-in, and then kind of fell apart the last week of the season. I ended up like 4 games back, but they had a shot to catch them. A big winning streak at the end of the year. I think they'll be absolutely a play-in team this year, minimum. Can they get into the top 6? That's going to be tough, man. When you start really writing down teams on paper, I think that's going to be hard. But this year, they'll have an opportunity to participate in the postseason, even if it's just playing. But they're definitely defensively, they're a team that you better come ready to go because they are always up on their toes. And they like the challenge of guarding. And I think a lot of that's just the influence of Ime Udoka and his toughness. He's challenged this group, and they've responded.
Timberwolves get the win over the Hornets 114-93. Pretty comfortable win from them. They had a big second and third quarter to kind of push this game away. Any quick thoughts on them?
No, I was talking to you yesterday and I wanted to see if the trend was going to continue. But going into the game last night, Anthony Edwards led the league in 3-pointers made per game and was averaging 12 attempts a game.
Yeah.
And I said to you, man, is that too many? Like, it's crazy because there's a fine line between wanting guys to add something, right, and add it. And he wasn't a great 3-point shooter when he came in. And he's really added his ability to get into his own step back and catch and shoots and transition threes. So he takes one. It's great because it makes him a more versatile scorer. But then I thought, man, is it now an imbalance the other way? Is that too many threes for a guy that's this explosive athletically at the rim? So I just kind of wanted to watch how that trend would go. And he had a great night shooting it last night, 4 for 6. See, I think like 6, 7, 8, occasionally if you're down and he needs to take 10, rarely, but averaging 12 a game attempts, I thought that was way too many for him. He took 6 last night, made 4, didn't have a huge night, didn't necessarily need it against Charlotte. I was interested in this game because I think LaMelo Ball is one of the most entertaining players in the league. And I think Minnesota, Anthony Edwards is as well. It didn't really materialize. Minnesota dominated this one.
He's having a sneaky good year. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, my guy, he continues to be he's good, man. And they have that bench where DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, when those guys are positive impact players, the Timberwolves are almost impossible to beat. I really think, and he's shooting the ball well. He does a lot of things well, but defends his butt off. He's incredible. The Thunder get the win over the Magic 102-86. They're like Boston to me, and that most of the time you check the box score, Magic are down, obviously, right now. Paolo Banchero trying to figure things out. They have not scored in the 2 games. I think it's 2 or 3 games now that Banchero's been out. They're not getting to 100 points. But the Thunder are that team that half the time you check the box score at halftime and you're like, oh, it's over. Okay, that game's already over. And that was the case last night.
Yeah, it was. And they have the ability to beat you in a number of ways. They can clamp down on you. They can turn it into a track meet, get up and down. Their ability to force turnovers that leads to easy offense is kind of a hallmark of their team. They also have nights that they can get hot for the 3. They haven't shot it collectively great this year after a great year last year shooting the 3. And really not much to speak of last night. 31 attempts, kind of a low number by today's standards. They just do what they have to do, man. They're so confident. This group is so confident right now, so connected. I think they've got the best chemistry in the NBA, and that goes a long way when you've also got a lot of young talent.
The Orlando Magic side of things real quick. Anthony Black to me is a player that I'm just so interested in because I love so much of his game, but he's got to be able to shoot. He goes 0 of 5 last night. And the shooting part of that is going to become harder and harder, obviously, with Banchero out. So, but he's a guy I look for in this stretch of games and say, okay, how is he going to perform? Because they're going to need him. They need somebody to shoot above their pay grade. And he's a guy that if he can do that, he's going to be a heck of a player. Want to know the saddest team in the NBA? The Pelicans, 118-100. They lose to the Trailblazers. They're a team that had high expectations, obviously, coming in. Do you bounce back? They're a sad team out the gate, and Zion Williamson not in this one. What do you make of the Pelicans? Zion behind the scenes having a little bit of a weird year. Not, has missed a handful of games here, missed the opener. You thought this would be the year he takes a step, but it just looks to me like this is a team that I kind of feel like I know exactly what you're going to get out of them this season because we've seen it so many times already.
I would like to know the vibe last night in that building, man. They got outscored by 21 points in the fourth quarter, 39-18 in a game they led going into the fourth quarter. Now, they didn't have CJ McCollum. They didn't have Zion Williamson. That's a big deal. You still have Brandon Ingram, and you still have role players that you and I both like.
And you're playing the Blazers.
Yeah, look, and I was going to challenge you. Like you said, you think maybe the Jazz might have the worst roster in the NBA. I'm not sure if it's not Portland. It's to me, it's one of those two teams I would probably list at the top of just looking up and down it and like guys you would pick and say, yeah, I want that guy on my team, filling out a team. Portland might be in that category. So it's a game at home. Without those two guys, you still should be able to win. And they were in position to do it, and they get outscored 39-18 in the fourth quarter. Inexcusable. But New Orleans is just that team. Zion plays, I'll watch him because he's fun to watch. I just don't know how you really put a lot of stock in what the Pelicans are or what they can be or any sort of threat they represent.
The Nuggets beat the Raptors 121-119. The Raptors, I've been impressed with the Raptors this year and how hard they fight, but they don't know how to win games. And this was a classic example. This is the second time they've been up 10 points within 5 minutes against Denver, up 10 points within 5 minutes of the game and have blown it. But we talked about Gradey Dick yesterday and what a great season he's having. He was phenomenal in this one. 26 points, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He's a heck of a scorer. We talked about his motor. That's what stood out to me. He was moving nonstop. He's just cutting through, catches the ball on the go, and just has a crazy motor and a confidence to his shot. But at the end of the day, one team had Nikola Jokic. He got it done. 28 points, 14 rebounds, 13 assists. Any quick notes on either of these two teams?
No, it's this is the kind of game. If you're Denver, you got to win the game. I mean, I know that they had their hands full. You're right, though. At the end of the day, you have Jokic. You got to win this game. It's it's amazing how on a night you get challenged like that at home by the Raptors, who are not a world beater. They're a bottom feeder team in this league. And it's amazing, though, if you win the game, it is amazing how you kind of just move on to the next game. And if you lose it, there could be some carryover, man. Yeah. Like you really start to question what's going on here. Now I know, you didn't have Jamal Murray, so that's a big deal, but you got to win this game. And your point about Gradey Dick, I didn't see this game. I saw the stat line. This is looking like a normal stat line for Gradey Dick so far this year, particularly the field goal attempts. He's so active in hunting shots, and it's not just, catch and shoot shots. He is a good cutter. He's athletic. He's really fast up the floor in transition. And most importantly, he anticipates every time he catches the ball that he might have a scoring opportunity. And he processes it that way because he's that confident. And he had another big night last night.
In the last game, we got through all 30 teams. I can't believe it. But the last game, the Clippers get the win 113-104, despite losing the first quarter 40-14. That's how bad they lost the first quarter. And yet they still come back to get the win. And the crazy part of this is Wemby's stat lines are the funniest stat lines in the NBA. 24 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 9 block shots, and yet was a minus 21.
And look, I'll give him credit because he has rebounded well from the game that I called against Oklahoma City when he was a total non-factor. 3 games since then, 25, 17, and 24, double-digit rebounds averaging. So he's rebounded well, but you're right. Victor Wembanyama is going to give you something every night. Typically, nobody else is going to give you, and it was last night. 9 blocks, and the guy almost has double with block shots and points. You rarely ever see in this league. Nothing really to speak of here, other than both of these teams are going to be fighting for their lives every single night in this league. That's how it's going to be with the Clippers. James Harden running this offense, and with San Antonio, just not enough talent around Wembanyama yet, and some of it's on him too. So, to me, that's maybe one of the most nondescript games of the night.
There you go. Legs, usually we go deep on one or two games, one or two teams. Today was kind of fun to speed run through the entire league and just talk about it. I actually kind of like just checking in, giving quick thoughts. I thought this was fun.
Yeah, I love it too, man. Sometimes it's just fun to just bounce into everyone. And we don't really get nights where every team plays, so that was an interesting one. But I'm proud of us for getting through every single one of those. There's an interesting storyline with every team. There's an interesting storyline every night with every team. And every game you watch, there's something when you love the game is going to jump out to you that struck you. And hopefully we covered a lot of that with all of these games outside of the top two we discussed a little bit more at length.
I also love that we have the night off. No basketball, no show tomorrow. I love the NBA. I'm glad 2 weeks in, it's kind of been a sprint. Let's take a little breather here and reconvene on Thursday. All right, we had one super chat come in. Producer James, what do we got? Oh, it's Psycho Blue is back. B-Ball Cthulhu thought he heard the seal crack. Either that or it was the background after Book shot the ball last night. He was off last night, man. Psycho Blue is a Suns fan. And yeah, he had a rough go last night. But you know what? It's good when you win, when one of your top guys has an off night. You still find a way to win.
Listen, Kevin Durant makes up for a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
So, when Kevin Durant plays like that down the stretch of the game, there's not much you can do, man. That was a vintage Kevin Durant closing performance. Just tough shot after tough shot, an answer for everything. Philadelphia was in control of this game, up 7 with a few minutes to go. And Kevin Durant basically closed the game while the Sixers were having all kinds of issues trying to figure out how they wanted to run their offense.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Do a favor. If you like the show today, hit that subscribe button. We're doing this 4 times a week. You also should download the podcast onto your phone. So that way, if you ever miss it on YouTube or whatever, you can just listen to it on the go. And hit that like button for us. Leave us a comment below. Let us know if you have any questions or a team you really want us to do a deep dive on. And we're going to be back on Thursday, everybody. Hit that like button on the way out.
We all silly like the mayor.